Okay, good evening. I would like to call the August 4th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to point out that this meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city's website and by teleconference for public comment. Due to the structure of this meeting, I would like to remind the Planning Commission to have their microphones turned on and positioned so the audience can hear. Some COVID updates. In accordance with the Governor's declarations of emergency for the state of California and the Governor's stay-at-home order, the City of Hemet is providing alternative measures for the public to attend, view the Planning Commission meetings. In-person participation is limited in the council chamber in order to maintain social distancing room capacity. Live stream, this meeting will be live streamed on the city's website at hemetca.gov/agenda. Public comments. Members of the public who wish to comment on matters before the commission in lieu of attending in person may submit comments on or before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting, or by following the link online comment forms. Comments will be recorded in the official meeting record. Teleconference. Residents may also submit public comments by teleconference during communications from the public by using the following teleconference number, 888-585-9008. When prompted, dial 743-463-604. Please mute your phone when not providing public comment. The teleconference line will be deactivated after public comments have been provided. We appreciate your understanding during this unprecedented time of social distancing under the Safer at Home orders. These procedures may be modified in the future as social and public gatherings protocols change. Thank you. Kang, can we have roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Beamsterford?
Here.
Commissioner Leverton?
Here.
Commissioner Leverton is joining us teleconference format. Commissioner Van Arsdale?
Here.
Vice Chair Wood?
Here.
Chair Overmeyer?
Here. Item number 3 is invocation and flag salute. Please stand and join Commissioner Van Arsdale.
Please join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, as we proceed with trying to live our lives in a normal way, please let us be mindful of our neighbors, our friends, our family, and the needs that come up in such an unprecedented time. As we proceed with our meeting tonight, help us to make sound decisions and be cognizant of all parties' interest and all parties' opinion. Thank you for our health. May we stay that way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the approval of minutes for July 7th, 2020. Any changes, corrections, or additions for the minutes of July 7th? None. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Or second.
Commissioner Beamsterford?
Aye.
Commissioner Leverton?
Aye.
Commissioner Van Arsdale?
Aye.
Vice Chair Wood?
Aye.
Chair Overmeyer?
Aye. It is approved. We move to item number 5, which is the public comment period. To accommodate public comment, we have made some temporary changes to this part of our agenda that were necessitated to comply with COVID-19 directives. There is a temporary 2-minute per person time limit for all general public comments on non-public hearing items. All who wish to speak, including commissioners and staff, need to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Members of the public shall comply with the adopted rules of decorum, Resolution 4545, a copy of which may be requested through the city clerk's office. You may also fill out a form and submit your comments online at www.hemetca.gov/councilchamberlive, Council Chamber Live, and it will be read aloud. Submittal must be done before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. For those that wish to join by teleconference, you'll be able to join by calling 888-585-9008. When prompted, dial 743-463-604 and the pound sign. You will be asked for your name prior to speaking. Reminder, if you're joining by teleconference, please mute your phone to prevent noise interference until you're given time to provide public comment. Please state your name and the item you're commenting on before speaking. And is there anyone that would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we will go to item 6. And,
Chair, so can check for the phone call.
okay.
Is there anyone on the line who would like to comment on any items not on agenda?
Okay, seeing none. We will move to 6A, which is the CUPA 20001, Compassion, Spirit, and Truth Church.
Good evening, Commissioners. Hello. We're going to be discussing Conditional Use Permit Amendment 20-001. The applicant is Compassion, Spirit, and Truth Church. The pastor is Perron Bonner. The applicant is Eric Bonner, and the location is 1025 North State Street. The requesters for the Planning Commission to review and approve Conditional Use Permit Amendment to modify/amend CUP 15-001 for the expansion of an existing 4,980 square foot church to a 9,815 square foot church located in an existing commercial center. And also consideration of an environmental exemption with CEQA Guidelines Section 15301, Class 1, which is existing facilities. The general plan land use for this area is OP, Office Professional. The zoning is also OP, so these two are consistent. Here's an aerial view of the site. This is the entire center. This is the existing location of the 4,980 square foot church, and this is the area that they're expanding to. It's just adjacent. There are tenants here and here. This is the WIC building. It's a government agency, and then there's another church here, and then these are medical offices. Here's the floor area breakdown. The existing building accommodates 1,585 square feet of assembly area, 676 square feet of children's area, 1,196, which includes the pulpit, offices, restrooms, storage, and lobby area. And this is the existing. The expansion will accommodate a 2,185 square foot multi-purpose room, 891 square foot youth room, 5 offices that are approximately 140 square feet each, and a storage area of 320 square feet. There is no signage proposed with this submittal, and there are no exterior improvements proposed. The church use at the proposed location is deemed suitable per CUP 15-001 due to the varied hours of operation between existing uses. No notable changes in tenant use within the commercial site since the original CUP was approved. Here we have the breakdown of the parking, and the medical offices and the WIC take up 18,455 square feet of gross floor area divided by the 250 square feet, which is the, for every 250 square feet, 1 parking space is required, so 74 are required for those uses. The New Beginnings Church, the parking is calculated by fixed seats in this instance. So for the 50 fixed seats, divided by 4 gives us a requirement of 13 parking spaces and 13 are required. The Compassion, Spirit, and Truth Church, we did calculate that differently because they do not have fixed seating. So the ordinance tells us that in that case, it would be divided by the, for every 40 square feet, one parking space is required. So the assembly area is 1,585 divided by 40. The required seating is 4 for 840 for a total of 127. There are 215 parking stalls in the center, so there's a surplus of 88 parking stalls. Conditions of approval number 28, 30, 31, and 40 from Building and Safety and the Fire Department will ensure adequate ingress and egress will be provided for the building. The lighting standards that are in place do not interfere with existing landscaping, or possibly the landscaping does not interfere with the lighting. And staff did visit the site in the evening and determined that adequate lighting has been provided on site for churchgoers to navigate safely in the evening. Per Hemet Municipal Code 90-42.9, the Planning Commission has the authority to determine that substantial conformance in that the proposed modifications are in conformance with the purpose and the intent of the original approval. So with the exception of the expansion area within the existing building, the church operation will remain the same as was previously approved with CUP 15-001, including the conditions of approval. Conditions of approval were formulated to address noise, outdoor events, and frequency of services as to not conflict with the commercial activity due to varied hours of operation between the office and the church. There is no significant changes in the conditions of approval for the CUP amendment. The sanctuary area used to calculate the required parking has not changed, so therefore there is no increase in parking requirements. The property is designated office professional. This project is consistent with the general plan regarding infill development and reuse, and those are the policies that are in the general plan, LU 4.3 and LU 13.7. The property is zoned office professional and conditionally allows churches. Staff has reviewed all the development components discussed in the Hemet Municipal Code as it relates to office professional zone and finds that the proposed project meets all zoning requirements for building height, parking, lighting, and landscaping. Here is the site plan. This area is what's now being used for the church. This is the expansion area. This is another use. It's the WIC building, and this is another church. This is a medical building, and then this is all the parking. Here in the blue highlight is the expansion area. It consists of the 5 offices, the multi-purpose room, the youth room, storage area. Here are the elevations. Here are some photos of the site. This is what is there now. This is the main entrance to the church at this time. This is another view which includes the entrance to the expansion area. Here's an overall view of the site. And the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant section 15301 class 1, which is existing facilities. Existing facilities is the operation, repair, maintenance, permitting, leasing, licensing, or minor alteration to existing public or private structures, facilities, mechanical equipment, or topographical features involving negligible or no expansion of existing or former use. So the church is not really proposing any alterations to the building. The building is existing, and so this is why they qualify as exempt for this guideline. Also, the office professional and zoning office professional are consistent, the zoning and the general plan, and then the other exemptions, which is there's no endangered species on the site, there's no impacts to noise, traffic, or air quality, and the project does not involve a change in the approved use. Planning Division recommends that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution Bill Number PC 2020-014, approving CUP Amendment 20-001, subject to the conditions of approval, and also direct staff to file notice of exemption with the county clerk. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Soledad. Questions for staff?
Thank you. Just quick, just for my own edification, if you will, on the parking, go back to that slide.
With the breakdown?
Yeah, so parking. The parking requirement is based on either fixed seating, if you have dedicated fixed seating, like this would be fixed seating, or assembly area if you do not have seating. So on this list, the existing Compassion, Spirit, and Truth Church site, that's not included on this, right? Because the New Beginning Church is a different church.
That's a different church. Correct.
So does that take away from the 88 parking spots, the existing?
No, the required parking didn't change with the expansion of the church because the assembly area didn't change for Spirit and Truth.
Oh, the total assembly area for the existing and the expansion is still the 1585.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? The other tenants, WIC and the other church, do we know what their hours are? Do they coincide or not coincide, I should ask, with the church going in?
I did visit the site. It was difficult to get the photo because it reflected, but they are open Monday through Friday, regular office hours, and one Saturday a month from 8 to 12, and that was the WIC building. So they are primarily office hours.
And I'm sure they were informed. They got a letter, so we heard nothing.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's all I have. Anybody else? Okay. I will open the public hearing. And can we hear from the applicant, please?
The applicant was going to call in.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, would you mind stating your name?
Hello?
Yes, could you state your name and address for the record, please? And welcome.
Hello? I can barely hear you. Hello?
Yes, would you state your name and address for the record, please? And welcome.
Oh, thank you. My name is Eric Bronner. The address is 1025 North State Street, in California, 92504. Hello?
Thank you. Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, I can barely hear you. That's the problem. I can barely hear you.
Okay, would you like to make some comments or just see if there's questions from the commission?
If there's any questions, I don't have any comments or anything. It's pretty simple. We're just expanding and opening the door and going to the other side of the building.
Okay. Yep, and staff has filled us in on that. Questions for the applicant?
I'm Lori Van Arsdale, Commissioner, and I'd just like to tell you I thank you for expanding, and I'm glad you have a need to do that.
Thank you. Hello?
Yeah, we're here. Okay, is there, is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak to this, either here in the room or by teleconferencing? We could hear from you now. If you state your name and address, you're more than welcome to speak. Nobody else on the line? Okay. All right, well, this is going to be an easy one, sir.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, you guys? Yeah. So since we heard from nobody else, we will close the public comment portion, and we can discuss it as a commission. Do you see anything here that needs further view?
I do not. My only thought is if it seems with the whole, I mean, it's great that, like Lori mentioned, that there's a need to expand it. If the assembly area is staying the same, it seems like the expansion would want to increase the assembly area. But there's plenty of parking for that, I'm sure. If there was, but no, it's great to have the need to expand churches. So.
Okay. Is there any e-comments from email or letters or anything? No other comments? Okay. If there's no additional thoughts, then I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution Bill Number PC 2020-014, approving CUPA 20-001, subject to the conditions of approval, and direct staff to file a notice of exemption with the county clerk.
Second?
Commissioner Beamstrofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Lieberton?
Aye.
Commissioner Van Arsdale?
Aye.
Vice Chair Worth?
Aye.
Chair Overmeyer?
Aye. Well, there it is. It's approved. Congratulations, and thanks so much for renting more space. Wonderful.
All right, thank you very much. I'm very happy here to have everyone as well as you too. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for being online.
Thanks.
Good night.
Have a nice day.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, item number 7 is the Planning Commission 101.
Can I ask a question?
No, sir, that's it. We're moving on to the next item.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Have a nice day.
Good night.
Yeah.
Planning Commission 101, overview of California land use law. And it's definitely Ms. Gutierrez we're going to hear from.
Sorry about that. So we're going to just probably have a little bit of technical difficulties. So I'm using a program called Prezi to do the presentation. So it might have a little, cut off somewhere. Please let me know if you can't see anything. But basically what we're starting today is what we're calling a Planning Commission 101 series. So throughout the next few months or so, I'll go ahead and be providing, along with staff, some just general overviews of different things that Planning Commission has to consider, and basically kind of provide a little bit of a classroom and a refresher for Commission, as well as, you know, for our citizens who are tuning in and really are hearing, you know, Soledad say findings, conditions of approval. We have CEQA litigation. We have all kinds of things that Planning Commission and planning staff actually have to consider before we bring an item to the Commission for discussion. So what I'm going to go over just is, I mean, such an umbrella, so bear with me. It really is just going to touch the surface of a very extensive legal world here. So I'll just go ahead and get started, but just to let you know a little bit of what we're going to go over, we're going to talk about the general plan, the specific plan, zoning code, design guidelines, CEQA, everything that you normally would see on a normal staff report that's presented to the Commission. So I always like to start by giving an example. So the whole purpose of why we have a planning commission is to avoid becoming places like Houston, Texas. So it is okay to say no when projects are being proposed that don't fit in with your zoning code, your general plan, specific plan, things of that nature. So for example, in Houston, Texas, we have an adult business right next to a retail store. And, you know, ideally, the point is to have different zones that are compatible with either industrial use or having similar uses within the same area to prevent items like this happening. So we do this, the city has the ability to do this and enforce this through our police powers. So we have a large body of law, but the main three that we really have supporting our police powers, all the way from the Supreme Court, is the Village of Euclid v. Amber Realty. And we also have our California Constitution that provides the city with certain police powers. And then we also have California case law, like Berman v. Parker, that also provides the city the power to actually enact general plans, zoning, and follow through with it in terms of the projects that we want to see within our city. So the Berman v. Parker case, they actually state it the best. It's things that come before the commission. Obviously, the commissioners and citizens, we want to make sure that it's for the well-being of the entire community. When we have a church that's wanting to expand, that's usually a good sign of participation. We're wanting a little more space to create a certain environment, and that zone allows for that space and that creation. So it really is just a balancing act of case law along with the intention of wanting to have something, a project that's in the city that's beneficial for the residents. So this is a list of the state laws that we all have to consider and that honestly govern the whole planning commission and the planning environment generally. So we have the planning department and the commission are governed by the government code. We have the ability to, or not even the ability, the requirement of having a general plan and the option of having specific plans for the city. We have zoning regulations that are governed by the government code. We have the Subdivision Map Act, CEQA, the Brown Act, you name it. It feels like you have to juggle at least 7 bodies of law just to get a project through to the commission and approved for construction. So that does come with a hierarchy. We have the general plan is the overarching body of law. We also have the specific plan. We have zoning ordinances. And then at the very bottom of that, we have design guidelines. So the general plan is just a long-term map that we want to see followed as a city. So when you see your Soledad saying it is consistent with the general plan has those policies in place, and the whole point is that project actually is consistent with the goals of the general plan. We also have zoning ordinances, so it's a division of land within a jurisdiction into districts or zones. We have like industrial zones, residential zones, commercial zones. It really just provides rules for uniformity within a certain district. And then design guidelines we have just to kind of encourage design goals. Design guidelines are just that, guidelines, but you also want to encourage a certain construction, a certain character, maybe within one zone that's different from another. So usually cities have design guidelines just to guide the developers into what would be best for our city's view. So that's just another chart kind of really going over the overarching police power, general plan. We have specific plans. In some cities we have coastal plans. We have zoning, design guidelines, and even below all of that is when we see the subdivision maps, we see development permits, we see variances, capital improvements. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes before it even gets presented to Planning Commission. So a little bit about the general plan. We do have requirements that we have to meet by state law. So it is comprehensive and long-term. We have 7 required elements that we have to discuss within our general plan. It must be internally consistent. Courts presume your general plan to be valid. It's part of that assumption that the people who are governing their city would know what's best for their city over a court that's hundreds of miles away or just not within the same jurisdiction. So if it is ever presumed invalid, it jeopardizes any kind of specific plan zones, anything that we have underneath that pyramid scheme. So it's really important that we have the general plan consistent and we go by what it guides us to do. So just to give a little bit of content here, the general plan has a land use element, conservation element, open space, circulation, safety, noise. But the biggest part, so this remains consistent, but the part that changes often is actually our housing element. So that's something that you would see a little more often of in terms of a general plan, any kind of amendments as well. So the housing element, it's actually based on a schedule for state law. It gets changed from basically every 4 to 8 years. So it has certain contents that we have to discuss. We have a required housing needs assessment, having housing need by income category. We have specific sites that are zoned for housing, policies to facilitate housing development. So this is the element that really is fluid and is intended to kind of keep up with the times. General plans are usually a little more long-term. This is the part that actually gets amended a little more often. So just some of the contents that we have here. We have vision, we have goals, policies, standards, implementation programs. So that's just part of what you would see just in a general plan. And we also have what we call specific plans. So specific plans, they're within the umbrella of a general plan, but it's basically a general plan for specified use. So we have like downtown specific plans, we have transportation corridors, we have large residential areas that may have a certain vision in mind that the city is trying to achieve. So for example, the city of Hemet has the downtown specific plan. So the purpose in our downtown specific plan is to revitalize the city's historic downtown area, foster a healthy community, and promote economic development. So every time a project is brought to you that falls within that downtown specific plan, we're looking for it to promote these items as they have been adopted. So our zoning code for the city of Hemet is actually in chapter 30. If you go online, you can access the municipal code and get a general overview of it. Like I said, this is a lot of information at once, so please slow me down if there is something that you would like a little more detail on. It's just really going to provide just an overview of what we have. So depending on the municipal code, sometimes we have codes that develop, like it's called a development code or zoning code, so it embodies the policies and regulations necessary to implement the provisions of the general plan. It specifies land use provisions that we're really trying to achieve. So it's intended to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents. And it's also, zoning is also used to provide economic and social benefits from an orderly planned use of land resources. So zoning is also in our California state law. So basically we just, like I had mentioned before, we divide the cities into zoning districts. California, depending on what city you find, has up to 19 different zoning districts. We have specific regulations and special permitting procedures for each district. One district might allow a use by right. Another one might allow that same use but requires a conditional use permit in order to move forward with the project. So it really just depends.
The zoning districts, the 19, is that kind of, are those templates as set by the state, or are those locally developed?
No, those are locally, yes. So there's no state-required type of zone, but different cities will have different zones. You might have a zone, for example, we won't exactly have a coastal zone or like an ocean scenic highway type zone. Those are going to look a little different than maybe the zoning codes that we would want here in terms of maybe residential or things of that nature. So it just really depends on what city that you are looking at, and every city is going to have different goals, different visions, and then different intentions for their areas of the city. So even within the zoning, like I had mentioned, you know, some uses might require a conditional use permit. Others, you might get a variance request. There's also non-conforming uses that you'll find. And this is the type of stuff that I know that I'm literally skimming the surface on, but in the future we'll go ahead and provide just a little more detail and case law of each one to kind of really give you a background of your parameters under each one. So there also there are also ways that we could also amend the code, amend the zoning code, amend the general plan, things of that nature. Oftentimes, you might get an applicant who is wanting to maybe have a use that isn't necessarily designated within that certain zone of the general plan. They might ask for an amendment, maybe something the Planning Commission sees that we want to encourage in one zone, but it doesn't allow it by right, or maybe it won't even allow it by a conditional use permit. So there is a way that we can have amendments made. Usually it is a presentation to the Planning Commission first, and then the Planning Commission would be the one to recommend the City Council adopt any kind of amendment to that code. So our design guidelines, this is more on the bottom end of that pyramid scheme that I had showed you earlier. So usually when we have design guidelines, design will start with staff, with the developer, for example, say that we have a residential development that we're trying to get through to Planning Commission. But those designs would actually be shown to the Development Review Committee first, and then shown to the Planning Commission for approval. Like I said, that there are a difference between guidelines where it's non-mandatory and then different kind of design standards that we may incorporate. So for example, for guidelines, it can just encourage innovation. It's just providing, for example, if we have a residential development, you can have the choice of a traditional look, a Spanish look, a craftsman look. It's just different options for a developer to consider. Whereas standards would be applied across the board. They wouldn't change for anybody. It's objectively measurable, we're required, it's very direct. It's usually site-focused. So there is a difference between the guidelines that are non-mandatory and then different standards that the city might have. Can include things such as like setbacks, for example. So this is just kind of a few examples of guidelines that, you know, the city may have in place, a city may have in place. And I'm sorry, I know it's cutting off a little bit, but this is more of what standards would be in terms of setbacks, sizes of parking stalls, landscaping materials, things that would apply to anybody within that specific project. It's not unique to one developer or one project in general. Now this is the fun one that literally could probably be an entire course at a college level class. So the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, you see it every staff report, every project. It is triggered whenever it's discretionary governmental action. That could directly or indirectly result in a physical change in the environment. And when we're talking environment, we can be talking about a natural or man-made condition. Usually things that are analyzed under a CEQA analysis would be land, air, water materials, noise. Do we have objects of historical or aesthetic significance, things of that nature. So the whole purpose of CEQA is to inform the decision makers about environmental effects. So we identify, prevent, mitigate, or avoid environmental damage. Through the process, you foster intergovernmental cooperation, enhance public participation in decision making, but it does not by itself prohibit a jurisdiction from adopting a project. This really is a consideration as part of that. Obviously, if we have CEQA challenges, that might make us hesitate a little more. But that's the whole purpose, is to get those inputs, understand what we're talking about in terms of CEQA law, and like really giving staff the opportunity to analyze any concerns that the public may have. So you might see references to all of these documents. So for example, today we had an exemption under your CEQA CUPA, right? But it might not be a categorical exemption. You might have something referring to an initial study, which determines whether the project may have a significant effect on the environment. You might have a negative declaration. You might have a mitigated negative declaration or an environmental impact report. There are many documents that can be considered or maybe a part of a CEQA analysis, but staff will always make sure that in that CEQA portion, that environmental portion of your staff report, that the CEQA analysis is clear and will provide either an exemption or references to the above documents. So that's just I always like to show that chart because it's just an overview of the EIR process. That's definitely the most time consuming, the environmental impact report. But, you know, CEQA is just its whole body of law just on its own, so we'll definitely have to come back to that and just go deeper into each document itself to really provide a little more information for the Commission.
Is there any application where from a city perspective, there would be a NEPA involvement, or is it just simply CEQA?
Yeah, for purposes of planning, it would be CEQA. Mm-hmm. So every project brought to the Planning Commission will have that CEQA portion in your staff report, and it's just an example for, you know, today, for example, we had a Class 1 existing facilities exemption. So that's just some language that you might see on a staff report depending on what the analysis was for that specific project. So I'm not sure. I know that that was a lot of information really fast, but if there's anything I can answer, maybe if there's any request for a certain type of permit or body of case law, I'd be happy to provide a further presentation. But I really just wanted to give the commission just an overview. You know, it never hurts to have a refresher, but it's also really designed to provide the public with an idea of every body of law that you have to deal with. And sometimes we even might have things of like a constitutional nature, especially if we're talking about things about adult businesses. There are First Amendment rights that would have to be considered. But this is just the standard body of law that it doesn't matter what project is brought before you, you're going to see references to this. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Again, you're going to go over the conditional use permits and CEQAs again.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So this, like I said, we will be going over conditions of approval, findings, anything in particular that the commission sees over and over to really just provide some insight of what case law governs, what municipal code sections govern that particular project. I know that CEQA is always a huge monster that we kind of have to deal with. So, you know, breaking down CEQA, breaking down the findings, breaking down the conditions of approval. So this was just that introductory presentation to just give you that overarching, this is all the things that Planning Commission and staff have to consider in terms of projects. And then from here, we'll go into smaller, more detailed understandings of what it is.
Well, so a large part of why the commission exists is to facilitate the CEQA requirements, specifically in regards to public hearing and public comment, right? So last year there was some presentations given by staff in regards to some of the state mandates on you know, kind of pushing towards more expedited review and approval processes of projects that would incorporate more of an administrative review and approval that would then potentially remove them from the public review process and thereby reducing the commission's role on that, right? So how does that tie in with all of these other, and it's not a question for tonight, but maybe that's something that we could kind of touch into a little bit in the future, you know, some of the state requirements on streamlining the processes, and how does that impact the commission's role and, lack of a better word, authority in regards to having a say on what happens in our own community?
Definitely, and I think it would even be beneficial to kind of go into the historic purpose of when CEQA was first adopted and what the intentions were. And then, you know, how it was used to actually derail or completely just take off the books a project. And I think that that's kind of when the state steps in and case law steps in to kind of provide those parameters, but we can definitely go into that.
No, that's a
Commissioner, if I can kind of add to that. I think you're referring to the objective design guidelines that we kind of discussed, which is a section of the area in the city that we would have a standards that are already applied, and as long as the developer fits into that mold and they comply with all of those standards, that they can go directly into the construction of the project. The way that works is that you'll be presented with those standards first, and you'll go over all the details as to setbacks, the height, the design, all the items that Stephanie mentioned that could be part of more of a discretionary, but you would set that standard and you would make that as the ruling or the law going forward. And when a project fits into that perfectly, then they don't have to go through the process because you've already done that for them. So that's one of the ways that you can bypass the Planning Commission, if you will. But you've already made those set of standards that the developer has to fall into in order for that to occur. They don't go directly into that, just not meeting or not fitting into that standards. They would have to make all of those check marks and meet it in order for them to go through that process.
Yeah, it just seems like there's definitely some value to streamline the process for providing a venue for the public to have a say on a specific project that, yes, it meets, maybe it meets. Just one of those things that our role as planning commissioners, it's good to have a good understanding of those boundaries.
Yeah, one of the things I learned early on was how hamstrung all staff, planning, city council is. On the other side of that equation is a lot of the things that the state mandates, particularly when we came to the housing elements and some of the low-income housing that we've struggled and battled with. That Deanna used to talk about it. I know Kang has to deal with it too. We're pushing back in ways because we already have anyway all that stuff. So I talked to my friends and well, you're on the planning commission, you can just do this or something. And of course, that's not true. We're very confined to a rigid structure. So, but I think that when a conditional use permit is triggered, and then of course anything to do with CEQA would be helpful, I think, for the public and this commission.
Sounds good. We will make it a plan.
Thank you very much. Very good. Okay, item number 8 is department reports. Mr. Kane. City Attorney reports.
Nothing to report tonight.
It would be community development reports, Mr. King.
Only item that I would like to report, I don't know if you've already know, but Councilwoman Bonnie Wright has resigned her position. So they're going through the option of how to replace that position. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
Not aware of that.
Also resigned her position from Eastern Municipal Water District.
Okay, well, she's retired. Yeah, well, good for you. Future agenda items.
Yes, sir. We are working on a number of different projects, and a lot of them are consisting with both the commercial and residential developments. We have very exciting projects that are coming forward to you. Some of the items that we have for you shortly would be extension of the map and a new map, parcel map. And then there's some changes that are coming for the general plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendment for a hospitality use. We're trying to give them a little more flexibility in extending their floor area ratio so that they can have a better product for their proposal. So some of those things are coming online. We have a lot of major builders coming into the city and looking. We have major retailers coming in to the city and looking to build. So there's some exciting projects coming before you in the future.
Planning Commissioner reports.
Sure. Commissioner Beamsterfer?
I have nothing to report.
Commissioner Leverton?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Van Arsa?
Nothing to report.
Vice Chair Wood?
The upcoming projects got me thinking about something real quick. Is there anything that we're looking at as a city in terms of adjustments for restaurants or things of that nature in light of COVID for outdoor seating or things of that nature? Has there been any interest from the community and restaurant businesses to look at opening up?
Sure. We have actually done that already. We've used a temporary use permit to kind of give them an opportunity to provide outdoor seating. It was decided by the council, suggested by the city manager, to do a no-fee permit, temporary use permit, so that they could have an opportunity to set up an outdoor seating, so that during this pandemic they have an option rather than close down the restaurant. So we have, I believe, 4 restaurants that have approved, and we have several that are in the works.
Nothing.
To take great advantage of those. Right. What is your average time for approval for a restaurant when they apply for outdoor?
For something like that, we're trying to do it within 1 week.
Nothing to report besides that.
Chairman Overmeyer.
Just to say that I will be out of town on the 18th of August. Okay, if there's nothing more, we will adjourn until August 18th. Will you be on, Mr. Work? I'm in the meeting.